We begin today, chapter 5, in trying to understand. This is the second book of Tanya, called Shar Yichud Ve'emunah. It is the gate, the pathway to the divine unity of God. How to understand God within creation and the unity and the oneness within creation. And this is a Chabad teaching, which means you need wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. It's not about faith. Well, it leads us to a greater faith, but it is about understanding the power of Creator within creation. And it's a arduous task, not so simple, because we're learning abstract ideas that we ultimately want to be able to make real for us. And that's the ultimate goal over here, is that God's presence in this world should be something more real. I call this the physics, the pure physics of the universe. This is more pure physics than E equals mc squared. This is more absolute than any other form of scientific understanding of the universe. It is spiritual, mind you, but it reflects itself very much in a physical universe, as we've discussed briefly in some instances. Perhaps get more into that. So where are we? Let us recap to make sure we're all on the same page. At the end of the previous chapter, which is important, understanding how is it possible God is everywhere, even after creation. He's not removed in his palace and views us from above, right? But he's everywhere. So, well, if he's everywhere as he was before creation, there was only his reality. After creation, there's still really only his reality. Well, then how come I feel my reality? How come I exist? So we explain, because and there were layers in the explanation, but I don't want to go into the layers right now. I'm going to go into the last point. Last point was, as the Kabbalists speak about creation, they use the terms or the keli, light and vessel. Before that, we spoke about attributes, chesed and gevurah, kindness and the power of concealment, power of restraint. And before that, we use the name of Havaya and Elohim. But there's a evolution over here in the understanding, or an evolvement in the understanding. And where we are at now is or v'keli, light and vessel. Now let's explain. What does that mean? God creates the world through a light that doesn't change. It's an infinite light. However, it garbs itself, it vests itself in a vessel. So, take water, and water kind of goes everywhere, right? Until you have it contained in something. It's called a vessel. So we're calling it light because light is connected to its source. Water, doesn't have that quality, or doesn't have the metaphor for it. So the light of God, that infinite light of God, is what's responsible for creating from nothingness. And nothingness doesn't mean a black hole. Nothingness doesn't mean, it means literally no creation. Doesn't mean an amoeba. It doesn't mean a mustard seed. Literally nothing. And from there, it is creating something. It's that power. Now, if that's all that God would create with the light of God, then we would be just like a ray of light within the sun. We would be completely, absolutely absorbed in our divine source. Now, God brings together with that a vessel. A vessel, which is the Word of God. And as we explain, words are containers. Words contain an idea. So the letters that make the word, that is the vessel, the keli, that it is now giving boundaries and therefore definition and limitation to the created being. And what is the ultimate limitation? The ultimate limitation is that we perceive independence. We perceive selfhood. We don't perceive the light. We just perceive the vessel that creates us, that is then concealing the light, not allowing us to perceive that we are in fact being created this moment, something from nothing by God. And that's real. That's real. Ultimately, what is the point? To rise above that. That's the human condition, to rise above the human condition, and to recognize that there is a divine light that animates all of creation, that is really that we're not separate from God. And through every mitzvah that we do, every time we study Torah as we're doing now, we're absorbed by that divine light. Now, we're learning that in our mind's eye and we understand it. Our physical eye doesn't see it. That's a different story. We won't get there right now. So, but what comes out of here is something very intriguing. The power of God's restraint is really a power of giving definition, limitation, boundaries, all right, of the vessel. Is an entity of its own, a power of God that is an equal power of God and His light, as both, we said, come from Atik Yomim, beyond the world of Atzilus, as we explained yesterday at length, and therefore they're both active within creation. Now, just as the light of God is infinite, the truth is the power of restraint, or this vessel, even though it gives definition and limitation, but its power is infinite. Now, the problem, so to speak, the problem of that is, and that's what we're going to address now, is as a result, creation, with this power of concealment, the vessel that conceals the divine light, just like, hey, you can't see the water in my mug over here, right? Not much there. Need a refill. So, inasmuch as the vessel is an entity, a reality that is restricting that divine light, well, if it's got that infinite power of God and it's restrictive, it's restrictive to such a degree that it will be almost impossible through the act of creation that we should be able then to rise above the human condition and be able to perceive the light of God. Not the vessel that God creates with, but the light, that we should connect to that and rise above the human condition. And therefore the human condition will be one, well, as on one level, as we do perceive as the big fish eats the small fish. Kind of cruel. Harsh, at least. Why is it harsh? Because in the creation of the gevurah of God, the gevurah, the power of God's concealment, as it is defined as it's explained with the word vessel, which the word vessel means the word of God that is restrictive, right? It's giving definition, giving limitation, but it's giving such a restriction that we'd be hard pressed by that alone that we would be able to ever pick ourselves up, rise above the human condition, and actually be godly people. And maybe we'd be, so to speak, good people only in what's good for me. And maybe it's good for me to be good to you, so I'm good, but that's the human condition. How are we going to rise above that? How's it going to be a rise that we could be actually good? For goodness sake, for God's sake. That's only if we can touch the light. But if the vessel is so constrictive, where do we get there? So this, the Alter Rebbe explains. This is what our sages say. in the Medrash that originally it arose in God's thought to create the world through the attribute of stern judgment. Gevurah, as we're explaining, through the vessel, right? The stern judgment. And if it were only that, then we wouldn't be able to rise above the human condition. But then God saw to that the world could not endure. It would be a very harsh world. That godliness would be almost impossible to connect to. Therefore, he associated the attribute of compassion, of mercy, to creation. Midas rachamim, compassion. Oh, what does that mean? Where's the compassion? So he explains. The compassion, or the Medrash explains, that the compassion is the revelation within the world, godliness, meaning that there's something supernatural power within the world, right, which is the light, right? Remember, vessel is the limiting, concealing quality. The light is the supernatural, beyond nature quality, beyond the human condition. And where is that? That's in the righteous. Tzaddikim, and through the signs and the miracles recorded in the Torah. What does it mean, the righteous? What does it mean, the miracles of the Torah? Miracles, signs and miracles are recorded in the Torah. What means all miracles? That's recorded in the Torah because this is all predated creation, as Torah predates creation. And also the souls are there before even creation of the righteous. All souls are there before creation. They just come into the world later. What does that mean? It means the souls of the righteous, they see the light. They're not limited by the vessel. Completely, shall we say. Not because they do miracles, but their very existence is a testament that in them is the light of God that is not limited to the vessel, that hides and conceals. And therefore, our relationship with them ultimately gives us a capacity that we can rise above the human condition. In other words, left to our own means, that would be very, very, very difficult. We would just be human and not godly. We would be very limited and restricted, as the vessel is. We wouldn't be able to get to the light on our own, but meaning to have some access to it. So it's the righteous, and also the signs and miracles is recorded in Torah, because, in other words, through Torah, those things give us also a capacity that we can rise above. That we can rise above. One second, sorry. Give us also a capacity that we can rise above. Just one moment. Now, then you might say, then the righteous, if they are in such a level, then what does that mean? That the world, there's no constricting value. The vessel that creates doesn't have a restriction on them. Well, it does, and even Moshe Rabbeinu it does, as he was only able to comprehend in the levels of the world of Bria, not in the world of Atzilus, and so therefore, yes, even though there isn't the same restriction that we have, but there is still some kind of restriction as a result of creation. So I hope I expressed this well and brought this idea in clarity. There's a lot more over here. This is actually a very difficult chapter, and I've just touched the surface. I've just gone through some of the teachings of the Rebbe to give a much more deeper and profound understanding, but it is, I need to review this again because it is so detailed and so many issues and questions over here. But perhaps another time, because I need more clarity myself. Just to give you that this is the most difficult point in this teachings is right here. Many different issues and questions that come up. But right now, I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm going to open up for discussion. First of all, questions and answers. Questions on the issues at hand. And then
I have questions.
Go ahead, Vilma.
What do you mean by the souls of the righteous? Who are these righteous souls? Are you talking about the Torah scholars?
I'm talking about someone like Moses, like the Rebbe. Righteous, as we learned in the first part of Tanya, means an individual, not someone who has mastery over thought, speech, and action. That's a Beinoni. That's an intermediate person, right? A righteous means that they have no urge in their heart, or completely righteous, that is, no urge in their heart at all for anything that is self-directed, right? No urge to eat something that I should have pleasure from it. That doesn't exist by anybody that doesn't have Torah mitzvahs. Is a complete, it just doesn't exist. That there's no urge, self-directed urge. They're completely a vehicle for the divine. That's what the righteous is. So therefore, their body isn't even a concealment for the divine light. Their body is not like a vessel like ours is. It's a translucent vessel. Ours is a vessel that hides, like my mug is hiding the water in here. Right? Clubhouse, you can't see my mug, but I got a mug in my hand. So that's the righteous. That there's not that many of those that exist. You might think someone to be righteous because you see how wonderful, lofty soul they are and such good, so good. But the very fact that they might have a thought that is a negative thought already means they're not righteous. A righteous person doesn't have a negative thought, an inappropriate thought. A righteous person doesn't have that. That's why it's hard to tell who is righteous because you can't see that. Right? Is that clear?
Yes, I think today's class was excellent. I just had, a few questions as always, but thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm looking on Facebook and I don't see any questions here. So, Davida, did I miss something? Let me know. Let me see if I missed something. On Clubhouse, we have Sina, Jeff, Mara, David, Addie, Erin, Lindsay, Karen, Alan, and Rachel. If anybody has something that they would like to ask, please do. And are reminded to question marks before your question, so I know that it is indeed a question. I don't see. Anna has a question. Oh, okay. Are the two? Bnei Noach are called righteous. Yes. Yes. Bnei Noach, meaning those who are not Jewish and take upon themselves the 7 Noachide laws, are called tzaddikim u'mas ha'olam, the righteous of the nations of the world. That's true. But there the definition of righteous is very different, not what we learned in the first book of Tanya. Because obviously just accepting upon yourself to fulfill the 7 Noahide universal laws of all mankind that are for non-Jews, doesn't make you righteous the way we've learned the concept of righteousness in the first book of Tanya, which there it's, speaking about someone who doesn't literally have a negative thought, let alone an urge in their heart for negativity, right? You can have an urge in your heart and maybe it's not going to come and express itself in your thoughts, but the urge might be there, so to speak, in the subconscious layers of your being. So that's a whole different ballgame. So yes, you're right, Anna, but that because there it's a different, term, righteous. For example, the word term righteous in judgment. If you go to a court of law, 2 litigants go, and one person is ruled to be right, and the other one wrong. So they're righteous and they're, they're righteous in their claim. So, there's a term righteous used in a claim in a court of law that is, of course, not the same term as righteous when we speak about a person. So when we're speaking about a non-Jewish person, so the term righteous has a different term there. But good question. Thank you for that, Anna. Okay. Clem has a question. Let me see. Do I see anybody putting up their hand over here? No. In Clubhouse. Clem. Are Lamed Vavniks also called righteous people? Yes. There are 36 hidden righteous people. And they are, yes, absolutely righteous. Good question. Vav Yud. What about the Baal Tshuva? They are said to be higher plane than the righteous. Yes. They're good question. Excellent question. Now, Baal Tshuva is someone who is a returnee to God, right, after being, doing something wrong, is higher than the Baal Tshuva, than the righteous. So there it means in the manner of service. We're not talking about person now. We're talking about the type of service. 2 types of service. The righteous way, which is step by step, level by level, growing incrementally. That's the righteous, doing what's right. And then there's the Baal Tshuva service of the penitent, who is leaps and bounds, came from a dark place and now transforming it into light, leaps and bounds. So that form of service, you see, we've got to be careful when we use a word. We have to know the context and how we're using it. But thank you very much for bringing that up. Bringing that up because it's very true. So in the service of God, there's 2 basic ways. The righteous way, which is sort of methodical, level by level, and then there is the Baal Tshuva way, but that's not speaking about the person. Okay, excellent question. Good questions. Eugenia says, I know now that the world would not be able to discover godliness on its own if we're created with the attribute of gevurah. Hashem displays the attribute of compassion, giving us righteous tzaddikim, who are conduits for the divine light, enable us to transcend the human condition. Wow, you said that really well, Eugenia. Thank you. Good job. Wow, beautiful. Okay. Vilma.
You know what this means?
What does it? Go ahead.
When your students are clear about the message, that means the messenger did an excellent job with ease of clarity of thought.
All right, thank you for that. All right, I appreciate that, and I hope everybody else had such clarity. So, seeing that I have no more questions and no more conversation over here from, I then just want to bring up then a living point over here for us. The righteous doesn't mean the what's the word I'm looking for? You know, righteous just means that we have in our lives people that are truly righteous. So the Alter Rebbe is someone who's righteous. Our teacher over here of Tanya, the author of Tanya, our Rebbe. So what I would suggest is something that comes out of this is that we need a deeper connection to righteous people, and I would suggest, of course, through their teachings, but it's not just from their teachings; it's from their personhood. I would strongly suggest people watching videos of the Rebbe. From those videos, it gives us a sense of light beyond the vessel, of transcendence of the human condition that we can attach ourselves to. It's very difficult on our own to be able to get there. Yes, there's through the Torah, the miracles in Torah as they're recorded, but through the righteous, and it's interesting. First, put the righteous, and then the signs and miracles recorded in the Torah. That I strongly suggest watching videos of the Rebbe that you can get on Gem, and you can get Chabad, Rebbe.org, REBBE.org. That would be a very good idea. Diane is asking, I was told that there needs to be 36 righteous people in the world at all times. Is this true? Seemingly, yes. 36. But they're hidden, so not necessarily going to, connect with them and know who they are. And even when we know someone who's righteous, there's a famous story of the Ruzhner Rebbe, lived in the 1800s, who was a righteous individual, and a chassid, one of his simple students, came to him after learning something from the Talmud, says, Rebbe, just learned there's 36 hidden righteous. Well, you're not one of them, because everyone knows you're righteous. So he smiled and said, woe unto me, achenvei, it's mir, that if my righteousness is what you see, because the truth is what we perceive of the righteous is only through our lens, and which is limited. And therefore, the truly righteous are way beyond, eons beyond what we perceive of them. Yet, we need to perceive, and what we do perceive is a glimmer of light that will give us a chance to transcend the human condition. And, and that human condition can be very harsh. As the big fish eats the small fish, as we've learned previously, as the Alter Rebbe is quoted, that the way of the wicked seem to be successful. At least they seem to be in the immediate successful, not in long term, as it does catch up. It does all catch up to us, all those negative things. But, that takes time for us to get there and to perceive that and to appreciate that. And Anna says, I know now that Hashem created everything with a deep compassion represented by the tzaddikim in every gentle way, enabling us to recognize Him in the world, in and around us, and choose to fulfill the divine will. Very good. Excellent. Thank you. All right, Vilma, it's something...
I thought it was excellent, and I think it's very important to connect with people that are righteous, but I also think that everyone, no matter what their condition is, can also be have some truth in them and be our guides, like people that are not necessarily righteous.
Absolutely. We can learn from everybody, and we need to learn from everybody. No doubt, no question about that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Denise, the Vida, was the Rebbe one of the 36 hidden righteous, even if we all saw him as a revealed righteous person? Well, the Rishna's story maybe gives us a little insight into that. Again, I'm putting in to Facebook, rebbe.org, that you can get more of a connection to the righteous. All right, folks, to be continued and our ongoing journey of learning Tanya with the Alter Rebbe. Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you for Chabad Zich and Kadeshim Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege, a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. A reminder that today at 12:45 I will be giving a class. And they'll be on Clubhouse also, 12:45. So do come and join, 12:45 to 1:30. And then we continue our wonderful Mashiach course. Wishing everybody a wonderful and great day. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.